Okay, so today we're going to talk about proving triangle congruence. Now what that means is that we are proving that triangles are equal in every aspect. All of the sides are equal, all of the angle measures are equal, but the letters are not the same. Okay? Now, what we're going to do is use those sides and angle relationships to prove it. And this is the most important part of this, is you have to have a combination of 3 corresponding angles and sides to prove that they are congruent. Corresponding angles and sides. So you're going to have a combination. There are only 5 ways to prove a triangle is congruent to another triangle. So if it's not one of these, you cannot use it. Okay, and there are 2 that students love to use and they don't work. And I don't have time right now to go into why they work. Probably put a video online so you can see, well, why doesn't this work? All right, so first one is really easy. It's side, 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 and we abbreviate that as SSS. Okay? So if I ask you for a triangle congruence reason, you're going to use SSS. If you want to write side, 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 you go right ahead. So basically, what we're going to do is we're going to highlight the matching sides. So when I say matching, I mean corresponding. So AB corresponds with XY. BC corresponds with YZ. And AC corresponds with XZ. Now there are some things that you have to write when it comes to triangle congruence, and this is kind of where students decide that they don't want to write, and then they get real confused about things. So we're going to write a triangle congruence statement, and then we're going to state which sides and which angles are congruent in just a second. But what I want you to do, if you're not going to highlight, you don't have to, but then you do need these little congruency marks. Okay, so you either have to highlight or you have to use the congruency marks. And most professional text that you see, you'll see the congruency marks. The other thing that I suggest when you're working these, this is a suggestion, it is not a requirement, but what I have found, and I'll show you when we get to the practice, this makes all the difference, especially when the 2 triangles are stuck together and they share a side or they share an angle. See how this says, like here I could put a side, and I can put a side and a side, right? I'm just kind of side, side, side. You don't have to do that. If you got them all highlighted and marked, it's pretty easy. But when they share a common side or angle, that particular thinking is really helpful. All right, so let's do this. We're going to state that the triangles are congruent. We're going to write a congruency statement for the triangles. So by the way, see how I have a pink and a blue angle right there? This one goes with that, right? And then I'm just going to follow around the triangle. Triangle ABC is congruent to triangle XYZ by side, side, side. So if I ask you, hey, how are these triangles congruent? This is what you write. Okay? You give me a triangle congruence statement and you tell me what congruency you're using. Now over here, just in the margin, I'm going to list the angles and sides that are congruent to each other because you're going to be asked for that information as well. For instance, AB with a bar over it, okay, is congruent to XY. And then I'm just going to go around the triangle. BC is congruent to YZ. And by the way, B and Y correspond, so I have to go in that order. I can't just say ZY. If I say BC, I'm going this way, then I have to say YZ because I'm going this way as well. So keep the letters together that go together. And then CA is congruent to CX. So those are your sides, and we did a little bit of that last week. Now let's do the angles. This particular triangle, these angles are singular. They aren't attached to anything else. In this particular circumstance, you could use one letter, but when they're stuck together, you cannot use one letter. Okay? So angle, and I'm going to start here. I'm going to say angle ABC is congruent to angle XYZ. Then I'm going to start at B. Angle BCA is congruent to angle YZX. And then angle CAB is congruent to angle ZXY. So you need to be able to do that. Once you figure out how they're congruent to each other, you need to be able to write a congruency statement and then pair up the angles and the sides. Okay. Now that you kind of get the gist of what we're doing, I'm going to go through these and I'm just going to go through them. All right, I'm not going to kind of pause and go over things as much. All right, so the next one is side angle side. It has an included angle, and what that means is that the angle is in between. Okay, you're looking for two sides, and the angle is between the sides. So let's go with this. Let's say we have DE and MN, and then let's do DF and MO, and then let's do angle D and angle M. Now earlier when I showed you this side, 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 marking it, and I said you didn't really have to do that, this is actually pretty handy because these two sides are the same and these two sides are the same. So here is a side, here is an angle, and here is a side, and then side and an angle and a side. Marking them, you can see what congruence it is. It says side angle side. So now I'm going to write my congruency statement, triangle, and I'm just going to do DEF is congruent to triangle MNO, so I'm keeping the order the same. And then let's do the side. I'll do the sides over here. Actually, let me do them over here because there's less room. So side DE is congruent to side MN. Side EF is congruent to side NO. And side FD is congruent to side OM. Those are my sides, and I just started at one point on the triangle and I just went around and I just grabbed two letters at a time. And I did that for both of them. Now angles, and I'll put the angles over here. So I'm going to start with angle D. So DEF is congruent to angle MNO. Angle EFD is congruent to angle NOM. And then starting with F, so FDE is congruent to angle OMN. Okay, so there's side angle side. It is really, really, really important that you understand that the angle is in between the two congruent sides. The congruent angle is between the congruent sides. That is super important that you notice that. Okay, now the next one, instead of side angle side, we're going to have angle side angle. Exactly. So this time the side is included, which means the side is between the two congruent angles. All right, so let's do this. Let's go ahead and do JK and RS. That'll be our congruent sides. And then let's do, let's see, angle J and angle R. And then we'll do angle K and angle S. All right, so this is an angle, oh, my pencil. Okay, this is an angle here, a side here, and an angle here. Here's an angle and a side and an angle. Okay, so this marking right here matches the congruency. So now I'm going to write the triangle congruence statement. Triangle JKL is congruent to triangle RST, just like that. So I just started at J and then I went around, started at R and I went around, keeping the corresponding angles in the same order. Okay, let's go ahead and do our angles. I'm going to start with J. So angle JKL is congruent to angle RST. And then angle KLJ is congruent to angle STR. And then LJK and TRS. Those are my angles. And now our sides. We have JK is congruent to RS. KL is congruent to ST. And LJ is congruent to TR. And then we have two more. How are you doing? How are you doing so far? Am I going too fast? Am I doing? Is that okay? Oh, I do. Thanks for pointing that out. That's great. Yes, this would be by side angle side, and this would say by angle side angle. Thanks for pointing that out. I was trying to hurry. Okay. All right. Okay, last two, and then I'm going to tell you the two that don't work, and you cannot use them. And it's really easy for students to fall into those traps, especially when the two triangles are not congruent, and then one has this and one has that, and they don't work. Okay, so the next one is angle, angle, side. And you'll notice now where the side is. It is on the, quote, end. It doesn't matter which end, but the side is on the end. Unlike previously where the side was in the middle, right? We had an angle in the middle, then we had a side in the middle. Now we have a side on the end. Okay? So let's do this. We're going to do, let's do angle B and angle Y. We'll make those congruent. And then angle A and angle X. And then let's do AC and XZ. Now you could have the other side of the triangle. You could have BC and YZ. That would be the same thing. That would also be angle side. But I'm just going to use this one. I only need to show you one, right? Okay, so triangle ABC is congruent to triangle XYZ by angle side. So there's my triangle congruency statement right there. Now I'm going to state my angles. So angle ABC is congruent to angle XYZ. Angle BCA is congruent to angle YZX. Angle CAB is congruent to angle ZXY. Those are my angles. Okay, and then finally our sides. So we have AB is congruent to XY. We have BC is congruent to YZ. And then we have CA is congruent to ZX. The big one here is that the side is not in between. It's on either end. The two angles are one after another. Okay, so we have angle, side. You could do angle, and then this pair of sides. Okay, it depends on what they give you in the picture on your practices. Okay, now the last one is called hypotenuse leg, and it only works for right triangles. There are some triangles, okay, that are going to look like right triangles, but they don't have a hypotenuse indicated, so they will be using another triangle congruency and they will not be using hypotenuse leg. Okay, this is your hypotenuse. It is across from the right angle. That never changes on a right triangle. It's always across from the right angle. So as long as I have the hypotenuse and then one pair of corresponding sides. So let's say that we did F, H, and VW. We have our hypotenuse and our hypotenuse. So these are congruent, and these two are congruent. You have to have the hypotenuse, and then you just either need these legs here, or you could have the other legs. Okay, so this would be a leg. So would this. And I'm going to say it one more time while you're catching up. There are some right triangles where the hypotenuse is not indicated to be congruent, and you can't use hypotenuse leg. You have to use what you absolutely know to be congruent. You have to use something else. So triangle GFH is congruent to triangle UVW by hypotenuse leg. That's our triangle congruence. And then we're just going to do angles and sides. So angle GFH is congruent to angle UVW. Angle FHG is congruent to angle VWU. And then we have angle HGF is congruent to angle WUV. Okay, so our sides, GF is congruent to UV, FH is congruent to VW, and HG is congruent to WU. Those are all of our triangle congruences. Let me tell you the two that do not work. Okay? So, these are big no's. Are you ready?
Yes.
Angle, angle, angle. If all you know are the three angles and you don't know anything about the sides, you can't use it. Because all triangles, the interior angles add up to 180. I can have two triangles in different sizes that have the same angle measures. Okay, due to a dilation, right? Those would be similar. I cannot use side-side angle. Okay, look really carefully at that little acronym right there. You can't use that one. You cannot use side-side angle. These are the same, right? And you can, actually let me, if you just know two sides but you don't know anything else. There. Two sides but nothing else, you can't use it. If you know two angles and nothing else, this one actually will come around later on, but for right now, you're not going to use that either. Okay, so those are the only 5 you can use. Very, very quickly, I just want to point some things out to you on this here. This is for right triangles only. And I just want to, remember I told you a minute ago that sometimes the hypotenuse is not selected. And if it is not selected, you can't use hypotenuse leg. So let me show you what you can do. Here I have 2 pairs of right triangles. And on this one, I can see that they're right triangles, but this time the legs are the ones that are marked as congruent. I cannot use the acronym hypotenuse leg, but I want you to notice here I have a side and I have an angle and I have a side. I have a side and an angle and a side. So on this one, I can use what they call leg, but if you don't want to memorize something else, okay, this would be side angle side, which is also called leg. You cannot use hypotenuse leg because the hypotenuse is not indicated. Okay, then we have another right triangle situation where you have these 2 angles, and then of course you have the right angles, and then you have side in the middle. What do you think that one is? 2 angles and a side in the middle. What do you think that one is? Very good. Angle, side, angle. You cannot use hypotenuse leg because the hypotenuse is not indicated. You can use angle, side, angle. You can also use leg, angle. But again, if you don't want to memorize the new stuff, just use this side because you already know those. Okay, then this one here, you can absolutely see hypotenuse is indicated, and then you have the side, which is a leg. This is the hypotenuse leg, and that's the one that you can just use the HL from the other side. And then finally, our last one. We have a side, which is the hypotenuse, so yay. And then we have an angle and an angle, and then we have another angle and another angle. We don't have a leg. So I can't use hypotenuse leg. What can I use for this one? Angle, angle, side. Angle, angle, side. You could also use what's called hypotenuse angle. But again, if you don't want to use the new thing, because I don't know about you, but I want to know 5 of them really, really well and not have 8. I don't want to have 8. Okay? This first piece of paper, you need to keep this completely out in front of you the entire week, because this is the lesson for the whole week. Let me just show you real quick on here what you are doing, and then this is your job the rest of the day. Let me show you one that is, do you see how these are, all of these ones where they are sharing a side, that side is reflexive and it is automatically congruent. So I need for you right now, on all of these sides that are shared, okay, mark those. Do not forget to mark the shared sides. Okay, the other thing that you need to do is mark vertical angles. If you see vertical angles, you need to mark them. Students who don't mark vertical angles get them wrong every time. And when they don't mark the shared side, they get them wrong every time. They're good with all the others, but then they forget which parts are congruent. So these are things that are reflexive in nature. Okay? And you're going to want to do that for all of these pages. On the front here, you have an angle, and then you have a side and a side. I want you to notice the flow. We have an angle here, then a side, and then another side. The angle is not between the two sides. Is that congruent? Okay, so I would write not congruent. Okay? Do you guys see that the angle was not in between the two sides? I cannot have ASS as a congruency. Can't have that. Okay, over here, I have an angle, right? And then I have a side, and then I have another angle. So these angles match here, those match there. What is this one? Take a look at it. Okay, do you see that? So congruent by angle, side, angle. This is your job on the front of this worksheet. Okay, if you turn it over, you have to mark the triangles, and you have to tell me what's needed. So you have to list some things. So let's just do number 11. Okay, I'm going to mark that reflexive side. That is automatically congruent, and I'm going to do that for all of these pictures. So 11, 12, and 17, reflexive, side, mark it. On number 18, I'm going to mark the vertical angle. Mark it right now. Okay, now on these, you have to tell me what is not marked but is needed in order for it to be angle side angle. Well, I have this angle here and then a side, so I would need this angle over here. I have this angle, it matches that one, and then the side, and I would need this angle. So what's missing is this part over here. That's the part that is missing. So in order for this to be angle side angle, I need to know that angle DUT is congruent to angle SUT. You can't just say angle U is congruent to angle U because that is a shared vertex. Okay? So, but U is the vertex. So that's what you do on this side. Okay, right triangle congruence, you're going to do it the exact same way. But again, please mark anything that is reflexive. Mark your vertical angles. Okay, make sure you mark your vertical angles and your reflexive sides. And those markings, guys, are required. Like, you don't get the choice to not mark them. You have to mark them. So this right triangle congruence is just mark them up and then tell me how they're congruent. And then that's it. Okay? Are there any questions so far? All right. Well, that is the end of the lesson. You have the remainder of the time to work